I asked my viewers once again to redesign my 3D printed trenchy truck, to take my public domain model and create something new out of it. But 6 trucks isn't exactly enough to make a full video out of. So I decided to make 8 more of my own from your suggestions in the comments, starting with the technical trenchy. And you guys were on fire for this one. It's like every other comment was asking for a truck with a mounted turret on the back. But before I show you how mine turned out in the print, I want to show you something similar, because a viewer actually had the same idea. And who else but Silly Fox, who made the flatbed trenchy trailer from the last episode. And this looks promising. The title literally says, "Not tested yet." And from the description, we can gather that we'll need to print this with supports, which I agree with. But while that's hitting the 3D printer, I'll show you my prototype for the technical truck. And ignore the projectile, because I don't have one of those. But here I used the Lego compatible trenchy to build a prototype swiveling mechanism, which is what I think I want to do for this one. So I took my flatbed trenchy and installed this frame, which was going to be printed on its side flush with the rest of the truck. But when I printed it out, I realized there's a stability issue. But even after adding some stabilizers to the base, it just kept falling out of place, which is when I went back to the drawing board and decided to make this cutaway from the frame of the turret. This way I could make an interlocking swivel component to lock these 2 pieces together, letting it spin around while still being attached. Now remember that viewer submitted technical trenchy? Let's compare them both. And once I snip off the supports, we have a really clean, straightforward print. No fiddling with extra pieces, just slapping on a few tree structures, and we've got a whole new trenchy. Now perhaps if I was making my own design from scratch again, I'd opt for 2 structures held together with magnets. This way I could just embed a small magnet in the chassis with another in the bottom of the turret, and that way it probably wouldn't look so flimsy as it does. So if somebody wants to make that idea, go for it. Then tell me where you uploaded it, as well as the title in the comments down below. And while you're down there, remember to hit the like button if you're enjoying so far. Or if you're feeling really generous, you can always hit the shooting star to boost the video in the algo. But now we move on to another popular request, that being the drag trenchy. Now, I've already made a truck with lipstick, but I'm guessing that's not what you guys meant. Instead, I'll be creating a racing truck with a spoiler for good measure. And once again, we have a viewer submission to go along with this. Now, usually when I make a variation of the trenchy, I take a single feature and I twist it to fit the specifications of the new model. But what I often leave out is making a whole new design of the bodywork, because just tacking on a spoiler doesn't really sell the racing look of our dear old trenchy, which is why I transformed it into this obnoxious creature. And I think this really spells out a different personality for the trenchy. This is no longer the little truck that could. This is the roadkill machine. It's like all of the worst parts of Italian car design meets the very best of 4-wheel drive. And naturally, we can't forget the spoiler on the back, which is ratcheted into place and fixed to the truck bed. But how does our viewer submission add up? So it looks like our submission is from Evil Me over on Thingiverse. And let's print this thing out. Okay, so firstly, I have to give points for creating a custom flag. And look how cute it is. I think it's a little dino. And look at the little skirt on the front. I'm also noticing that the cab is a little shorter in height on this one. And look at this. I never even considered doing a flat edge at the side of the spoiler wings. Now, what I forgot to point out about my trenchy is that the cabin is a little bit tapered in also, as well as having custom wing mirrors. But let's also not forget that Evil Me created a bed cover for racing performance, which I never even considered. So you can see there's a lot of difference between these trucks, but also a lot the same. And this is one of the exciting things about making these videos. Just the surprise of what 2 people can come up with when they both try making the same thing, and they come up with completely different results. Really cool. And thanks for sharing this one, Evil Me. Another suggestion that I've been scared to touch since my first video was the tow truck. Ever since I made the Tow Mater inspired trenchy, I've had this guilt of not making a tow truck conversion already. So I took the flatbed version again, and I created a sloping bed, as well as adding this big rectangular frame across the back window. And for the towing system, I thought I'd keep it pretty basic and just have a hole where I can wrap some thread around the spool. This way I can drag around a tether without having a fully functioning winch mechanism inside of this truck. Now, if somebody thinks they can make one of these small mechanisms, go for it. As for now, I'll chamfer off the edges of the truck bed and make those wing mirrors a bit larger. Now, with the towie printed off and the thread wrapped around, you could tie this to anything and just let it tug away. But continuing on with things I wish I'd explored sooner, I took a stab at making an engine.
One of my viewers mentioned how it would be cool to see the internals of my trenchy, given that I made a transparent see-through trenchy with the help of PCBWay, who also wanted to sponsor this video, specifically regarding their 3D printing and manufacturing services, which I used extensively in my previous video about testing the weirdest 3D print materials. So if you need to manufacture a part in, I don't know, tool steel or solid titanium, or even just a weird material like dental resin, you can trust PCBWay to handle your part and manufacture whatever you need for your next project. Whether it's 3D printed, injection molded, laser cut, or CNC'd, PCBWay are what I will be using to make my next video, where I'll be creating the smallest trenchy in the world. So stay tuned for that. And if you want PCBWay to help you with your next project, I've linked them down below, and trust me, the process is way easier than I thought it would be. Anyway, this transparent model got me thinking that I could still show off the internals of the trenchy without using resin parts.
So I popped off the hood and designed 3 different pieces to fill the hole. The first of which was this snot rod design, which by its size tells me that there's no room for a hood anymore in this place. I got pistons running down the side of this one too, just to flesh out some more details, and that's it. But for the other 2, I wanted to be a little more experimental, which meant creating literal organs for the trenchy. For the brain, it's not too difficult if you know your tools, just a lump of mass with a bunch of curated squiggly lines to telegraph the topography of your mind. And once I got that painted in pink, I switched over to the human heart, which was a bit more troublesome. However, I shaped it up and made it fit to size. And once I'd completed the paint job of the heart, I added some extra color to the truck in order to set the tone. And this is what I love about remixing. I don't actually have to do much surgery to the truck. I just dug a hole and made some original parts for that hole. But let me know which of the 3 was your favorite. Another idea I wish I'd done sooner was a convertible, which will come in handy later too. But for my first draft, I took the side windows off, the back window too. Really, I was just going for a safari truck in the shape of our trenchy, but not forgetting to create a basic mesh for the interior. And I wanted to preserve this front window because I just didn't really see the point in having this frame if there wasn't any glass. But that's the convertible trenchy for now. But like I said, I'll come back to this one in a bit. In the meantime, I wanted to explore another viewer submitted model, one that I wouldn't have thought of ever, that being the Storm Chaser Trenchy. So I had to do a little research here, and in simple terms, it's a vehicle that's modified to withstand crazy weather conditions, while also gathering data from the inside of a storm, which I'm guessing explains this big structure on top. So I downloaded the model created by Wii Sports Resort Unite, who has also created what looks like an airplane trenchy and a personality core. And after getting this thing off the print bed, it took me a second to figure out how this thing is assembled. But luckily I got it together. And look, it comes with a custom flag. Isn't it awesome that someone just inserted their special interest into some random guy's 3D printing benchmark model? I mean, I think so. What I love about this is how they took this rigid mechanical frame and retrofitted that onto my existing model, as well as extending the cab. At least I think that's what's up with this part, and eating into the volume of the truck bed. And I just want to say congrats on this one. I never saw this one coming. Next up, I wanted to showcase 2 models from the same viewer. Sometimes a viewer has 2 strokes of creative genius, and I apologize as I'm not sure if this is pronounced like Tuscan Raider or Tucson, Arizona. But whichever it is, we have 2 hilarious models, starting with the slammed trenchy, which at first glance, it just seems to shorten the cab to get a nice shallow silhouette. Until you realize they gutted the wheels to make it a low rider. So as well as looking like a swole trenchy from the front, the ground clearance is also altered, opting for thinner rims, which I welcome with open arms. Now ignore the dual color scheme. I ran out of black filament while printing these off. Now the truck bed has clearly had to be modified to account for this anatomical rearrangement, like how the truck bed has been raised and the indents for the wheels have been recreated from scratch. But despite all this, it's still a fully functioning trenchy truck. But remember, this wasn't the only submission they created. They also went ahead and made the twinchy double-sided truck cab, which reminds me of my backwards trenchy with the back-to-front cab. However, this one completely avoids all truck conventions, and with a genius name like Twinchy, I'm just amazed. I would have come up with the Siamese Trenchy or something. Another great viewer submission. Now back to my own creations. I saw that there was a surplus of requests for the trophy truck trenchy, and not knowing what a trophy truck was, I had to do some research, which killed 2 birds, as I was also getting referred to the Baja truck or a trick truck, which all seem to be the same sort of thing. And with this new idea, I of course made a more shallow chassis. I took the tires and made them a bit more chunky. Then I slipped this little skirt under the door to make this feel like it's suspended off the ground, even further than it already is. And last, we have a few features I sharpened up for the boxy trophy truck aesthetic, and this came out just lovely. And I think this is a good companion to the GT2 racing truck from earlier. Way to go, me and my ingenuity. Next up is another viewer submission, this time from Mate, who had a crack at another three-wheeler trenchy, but it looks like they went about it a little different from my original three-wheeler. And before I printed this off, I just had to separate this wheel piece from the main body to print off on its own, and then slot it back in halfway through the print. So let's have a look. An interesting difference in Mate's model is that the tire is part of the wheel mechanism, whereas my own three-wheeler is basically just a sleeve of the tire itself, and an axle running through the middle which is connected to the chassis. And Mate has the axle separated from the chassis. And just to be clear, this was made from scratch, without using my existing three-wheeler, just the original trenchy model. And you can tell because all my model remixes lack the car logo on the bottom, but since this is from the original trenchy download, it has the car logo. But there is a lower poly version of the trenchy without the car symbol, which is listed too in my GitHub for anyone interested. Now, the only constructive pointer I would give is to have these overhangs that hold the wheels in place to have a slope, and this would make the structure much more supported during the print, instead of just all of a sudden printing off of a cliff. And this would stop one or two of the visual artifacts that appear on the model. But regardless, the print came out and ultimately the wheels spin. So congrats on making your first trenchy remix model. Now this made me want to try another three-wheeler design. Actually 2 different three-wheeler designs. The first being a steamroller, but that feels a little out of the scope of the trenchy, seeing as they're 2 completely different vehicles. However, there is a similar wheel mechanism that's like the steamroller that I've been meaning to try for a while now. And that is the wheel mechanism we see in the Flintstones car. And a lot more was going to have to go into this to make it fit the theme. So I took the convertible I made earlier, told you I was going to need that, and made sure to lop off the front axle for a more fitting contraption. I then added some wonky surfaces to make this ride feel organic, followed by some animalistic features like these tusks, as well as the hood scoop being reshaped to look like a little nose. Or a big nose, actually. The front window was removed and the frame replaced with sticks and rope. Then I made sure to add some cracks in the stone and create some wiggle room for their little feet. And once I got this rolling off the printer, I had my very own Flintstones-inspired trenchy truck, which frankly, I am pretty pleased about. But this is where I had one final itch to scratch. You see, there was another three-wheel trenchy idea I still hadn't uncovered, and this was going to warrant a complete overhaul of the trenchy's chassis. That's a real tongue twister. But before I get there, I wanted to thank you all for getting us to 6,000 subscribers and cracking 100,000 views on part 2. I want to see if I can hit 10k subs by the end of the year. So if you want to see this channel take off into the stratosphere, be sure to like, subscribe, and for small channels like me, you can go the extra mile and hit the shooting star. And let me know if it's your first time doing that. Anyways, I was inspired by this image I saw on the BMNG modding forums of a car with a tractor tire as the rear wheel. And just like the other three-wheelers, I had to print off a separate part for just the rear tire. I also created this large cylindrical apparatus for the tire to sit snugly over the top of. And after pausing the print, dropping in the part, and resuming the print job, I finally had the ultimate rear tri-wheel trenchy. And just look at that. And thanks again to everybody who participated. It's awesome to see people get into using 3D software because of my videos. And if you take away anything from this, have it be that you can put your mind to making something new. You can do it even if you've never done anything like it before. I'll include a link to my GitHub down below with all the trenchy derivatives I made for this video, all in one big file. And if you guys make enough derivatives of your own, I'll make a part 4. But in the meantime, thanks for watching and subscribe.